All right, this is our 23, or it's not anybody's anymore, actually.
No.
This is sold.
Sold, this is gone. I just have a walk around, see if you hear any clicking and banging and crashing.
Like catching a fish.
Yeah.
How big was the fish?
You get into here, I always walk around with a pry bar. I don't have a pry bar.
Why are they rusted then?
I feel like I'm getting richer all the time here.
So the 2366, which is actually on our other channel, the guy that bought it is a good friend of ours, and he's actually owner of the 275 Massey that we rebuilt on the channel. I used to do a pile of work for him.
Anything we know was wrong with this, he knows about. So
Right.
we didn't hide anything from him. We were nice.
Let's get into it. All right, so this is a 20-year-old combine. It's a 1998 model, so 22 years. How many hours on it?
6,000 on the engine. Well, not on this engine. So 4,500 on the separator.
Basically, we use combines in our area primarily for wheat and for corn. So
And soybeans.
And soybeans. So you have different heads on it, which gathers all of the crops off of the field. It goes into the combine. The combine chews everything up, separates the expensive parts from the not expensive parts, and then carries them in a bin, and basically you truck them from there and make your money, right?
That's the idea.
Yeah. So start from the beginning.
Right up here, very front. This is your feeder drum and the feeder chain. Now this chain is getting worn. It's almost due for replacement. Slats are a little bit bent from banging on rocks. The drum is in pretty good shape. If you have a lot of rocks go through this drum, can be just completely hammered. There's a bearing on each side. This ones have been changed many a times. That's not a big deal, change those bearings.
How do you tell if the chain's worn?
There's a little adjusters over here on the side. So when the chain's new, you're probably around back here somewhere with that adjusting bolt. So we're over half to 3/4 worn.
So when your chain is new, your adjuster would be back here, just like the tracks on an excavator. The farther it slides forward,
Yep.
the more your tracks are worn. That's an indication on how good your chain is. He's got about a quarter left.
So someone might have taken a link out and then put you back to here.
Which you do on excavators and bulldozers too, but then at least you know, it still does the job. It's not timed with anything.
No, that feeder chain is not timed. There's 2 sprockets back here that run it, and the only way you can check those is you stick your hand in here or up underneath from the rock trap, and you try to feel the grooves to see if they're like this or if they're like that.
Like catching a fish.
Yeah.
How big was the fish?
How big was the
Oh,
grooves? So you just run your hand in there and feel it. Those sprockets are not the easiest to change, but it's a good indicator of how. So I got a rock trap on this one. Just reach up in here like this.
So the rock trap is supposed to, those little, how big of a stone would it catch?
So it'll catch. It likes round stones. Flat stones can bridge it, but rocks like this, it'll knock them out. So once the crop comes into the feeder, now this combine has a rock trap on. Not all of them do. In this area, you want a rock trap. So what it is it's a big beater that pounds the crop, and if it hits a rock, it'll drive it down into a sump down here. And this is the door. And you'll hear it in the cab when the rock's going through. You'll
Okay.
scare the crap out of you. I think you blew the whole combine up. It rattles up.
Another piston,
Bang. And then 9 times out of 10, you open the trap, the rock falls out. Sometimes it's stuck up in there or hunks of wood.
And then you leave it or keep
No,
going,
you
or?
dig it out. Well, first thing you do is you shut it off and make sure absolutely everything is stopped turning, because if you put your hand up in there and the rotor's still spinning, you might not have a hand anymore. Because the rotor, the impeller is right there behind the rock trap. So before you get digging in there, make sure everything is dead stop.
Okay.
Because once you shut it off, there's a lot of motion, everything is still moving, right? So you can easily make it out of the cabin down here and have your hand up in there before everything stops spinning.
Yeah.
And that's not gonna end well.
So hop on Instagram and check your latest posts and take a picture saying, oh, I got another rock, life of a farmer.
So this chain here wears out every year. Now, the OEM is an O-ring chain on there, so it doesn't wear out as much. I've just been putting 60 heavy chain on and changing it every year.
It gets a lot of the crap right off the head.
Yeah, but it's spinning really fast.
And it's easy enough to change, so why not?
And 60 heavy chain is a third of the price of that O-ring chain.
Right,
so.
right. So what does the impeller do? You said the impeller is right behind.
So the impeller is right here. So we can look at that up through here. This impeller, it gets the crop going into a circular motion to get into the rotor. It feeds the rotor. So this combine originally, now if you know anything about case combines, you'll be like, wow, that looks a little different, because where's the elephant ears? So they originally had these 3 kind of a curved blade, And what they do is they push the crop kind of out against these vanes. There's vanes in here that are kind of like threads on a screw, right? Which gets it moving. And this is an update kit. It's kind of like basically like a tip of an auger, a lot more efficient. So this would be the equivalent of going to like an AFX style rotor, which all the case combines run now. And if you have wore out elephant ears and you put new ones in, that's ridiculous, because for a little bit more money, you can have these, and you'll want to go buy a bigger header because it makes a world of difference, these things. This was the best aftermarket update for this machine for capacity. So, crop is coming in here, it's going around the rotor, the impellers, and then the vanes in the cone have got it going round and round. Comes in here, it's going to get pinched between the rotor and the concaves, which is going to thresh out the grain. Grain's going to drop through these holes onto our auger bed, get moved that way towards the cleaning system. Rest is going back out the back. 2 sets of concaves this combine had, small wire and large wire. Small wire was for the small grain cereals, large wire for corn and beans. I got filler plates in the front here, which will help with pods, green or soybean pods in the bin, because it'll hold them up here for give the rotor a couple more cracks at it to get the beans out. Otherwise they just drop through here already, just still in the pod, and that ends up in the bin. So it drops on the auger bed here. Now, this auger bed I have changed. It's the only one I've ever changed or ever seen need changing, and I don't know why, but it was all busted out and wore out. And when I changed this auger bed, I was convinced that is what they start with when they build the combine, and they build the combine around it, because it is not easy to change. It is a complete pain. So if yours is all busted around these welds and wore out, be prepared for a good project. The auger bed itself was only like $1,000, but I'm not coming to help you change it. Let's put it that way. All right, so once you get up here, now this is more for threshing, and so this was 100% of your threshing and 80% of your separating is supposed to happen here. This section here is supposed to take care of the last 20% of the separating. There's also different grates. There's 2 sets of grates. These are key stocks. There's also slotted. Slotted you want for wheat and grains. Key stock for beans and corn. They're bigger holes. They're more aggressive. And it's just to get that last bit of grain that's trapped in that straw to fall out here. Because if any grain gets past here, it's going out the back and onto the field. That's not really why we grow it. We grow it to put it in the bin. Up here you got your transport vanes. So they're similar to in the cone. It's just vanes. It's just like threads on a screw. And you can adjust them to slow them down so the crop stays in here longer, gets more separating, or to speed them up. So if you're gonna speed it up, you have to start at the back. So it's more like a fine thread bolt or a coarse thread bolt. You have to start at the back and work your way forward. If you speed these ones up and not these ones, you're gonna end up with fast and then slow, which is gonna equal plug. So there's also, you can set them back here too. I've never really adjusted them over to concave. I've played with these ones a bit. If you're dealing with something like soybeans, you want a little bit more separation. Some other things, if it's really good separating up front, you just wanted to get it out the back. Because the more you rip it up, the more small stuff you end up down here.
Bearings in front and the back, do they ever go? Is that like a big thing?
On the augers?
On the
rotor?
On the rotor.
Well, there's one main bearing in the front of the rotor. It's greasable, never really had a big trouble with that. And the back is held up by the rotor gearbox.
Okay. And then the augers?
So the augers, there's bearings in the back. We have to actually get in the back to see. And little gears, you can see these are getting a little wore. There's wood blocks in the front. We can crawl underneath. Those wood blocks are really inexpensive and rather easy to change. And I'm pretty sure any combine you go look at, those wood blocks will need replacing. All right, so once the grain comes off the augers there, it gets onto the screen here. It's top sieve, and there's air blowing up from the bottom, and this thing is shaking back and forth. It's kind of like a circular motion like this. And the idea is that the air keeps the chaff elevated, and it runs out the back, and the grain is heavy enough that it falls through. Once it goes through this one, there's another one underneath that does the exact same thing. So if anything that runs off of the bottom one goes into your tailings elevator and runs around back to the combine. So the idea is you set this one so that all the grain will go through, and maybe some of the full pods and unthreshed heads, whatever, it all goes through here. And then you set the bottom one tighter so that just the grain gets through, and anything that's unthreshed will go off and back into the rotor and get rethreshed. Now, anything that comes out of the back of the rotor is entering this bad boy, which is your straw chopper. And it is gonna shred it all to pieces and blow it out the back. There's 2 speeds on this, and there's a set of stationary knives up and down, so if you drop those knives down, it won't cut it up as much. So if you're combining wheat and you want to bale the straw, you'll drop those knives down, slow this thing down, and it'll maintain some straw length. If you just want to blow it out so it rots, those knives up good and high speed and it'll destroy it. So these knives here, you can see they're getting kind of worn on the one side. They're due, but they're ambidextrous, so it's got a good edge on this side, so they need to come off and be flipped. This sieve is an aftermarket sieve. You can see in here, it's got little plastic bushings in. My old sieve was all pounded up from, who knows, it was abused. It was like that when I got it. And then once you get up to the back, right, you're gonna hit on your spreaders. So we got the one off because Aaron couldn't squeeze in there otherwise. And it's gonna spread it. Now ideally you want it to spread the chaff as wide or as close to as wide as your head. So this combine, I updated it and put the curved bats on. That made a huge difference. It used to, I had a 25-foot head on here. It used to spread 20 feet or 18 feet. I put these curved ones on and now it'll spread as wide as a head if the wind is not giving you grief. So the screening is basically just look at your sieves and make sure all the bats are still in them. There'll be holes, there could be holes pounded through them, right? That's the big thing. So there's multiple different sieves. So that was pretty much a standard sieve. If we go look at my other updated version of a combine here, you'll see the different sieve that this one came in. So this is a Gordon Airjet sieve. It's non-adjustable, so I just remove these guys here. I got 3 different sets of screens that go in here. So this one is for corn. I got one for beans and one for wheat. And then you can see the bottom screen here. That's the shoe screen there. You can change that one too. You can pull that one out. I actually have another one for doing clover screen. Clover screen. I have a clover screen for doing clover seed. So you can see it's got really small holes. Clover seed is really small. And the guy that takes the seed and cleans it, if you're not running a clover screen, he gets kind of upset because a lot of junk falls through otherwise. So really tiny holes.
So that's basically how it works and the small parts associated with that, but there's a lot more to the combine.
First of all, it's tires, right? Like, tires could be expensive. That's anybody, it's easy to look at. You look at tires and say, oh yeah, but from running on corn stalks or running on wheat stubble, there'll be stubble damage on them. They'll all be just checked and pitted. These ones aren't too bad. These tires actually after the other machine that I had bought. So there was only 600 hours in these tires.
Typical weather, cracking, dry rot, anything like that.
Or the crack around the bead, right? Because you're running
pretty low PSI.
So these final drives, this one has got the heavy duty final drives. There's also standard final drives, some of them had. You want the heavy duty final drive, especially if you're running those big bin extensions and big headers. I think the 88s you could only get the heavy duties, but on the 66s you could go either way. So they do sometimes will leak oil out of the seal. Is it because there's water gets in there and freeze thaws? I don't know. I've done the seals on both sides at 1 to 1 year, 2 years later. It's a bit of a project. Getting the final drive off is easy, but getting it apart and getting a new seal in is a lot of bull work. So if it's leaking, you'll see water. You'll just see there'll be oil on the rim. I had one on the last fall, my other combine, actually the bearing went out of it. It wasn't leaking oil, just the bearing went, so I don't know. And it cleaned house. We ended up changing the final drive. It only took 3 hours to change the final drive. And I found a used one for reasonable, so that wasn't bad. Oil out of any gearbox could be an indication that there's a bearing gone in it or something.
Now you generally don't pressure wash a combine, right?
Well, I do in the summer, like that combine over there, it's gonna get washed here probably this week.
So in the fall you want to blow it off,
yeah.
And then in the summer, like why don't you
combining? So this year it was March.
Okay, so why don't you pressure wash it right when it's done in the field?
Because it's usually wintertime when we're finished combining corn, and you get water in your bearings. There's so many moving parts on this. There's so many non-greasable bearings. You get water in there, it freezes, water expands. Then you end up with bearings you get to change the next year.
Okay, so if you're buying a combine and it's spotless, it's because they don't run into the freezing issue, or they have a nice heated shop where they can park it for 2 weeks?
Once this shop gets some heat on it, then I would not be afraid to wash it.
Okay.
Pull it in here for a week and a half, 2 weeks, let it all get dried out. So this combine here has got a big top on it, big grain top. I'll show you a clip of that later. So that means it'll hold 7 ton of beans or wheat when it's full, which is a lot of weight on this combine. So these bolts here I've had to change before. You can see these nuts are new because they break. There's all the weight up there. So if you don't stay on top of that, this whole combine will fold. So you want to check your combine, check these supports, check these side panels and stuff, make sure they're not cracked and bent. Because with those big toppers up there, they were not engineered really to run those. That's all aftermarket stuff. So
the combine empty weighs like 23,000 pounds.
So
and
you
then you
another
add
14,000 up there.
Yeah, you add another
14,000
14,000.
Right, but that's all up top that weight, right? It's all squishing down. Now then the bin here, you can see this one here, it's got a hole in it. It's rotted through because of gets caught out in the rain in the field sometimes. Check your bottom of your bin here, make sure it's not rotted out. See, I got a patch over here because there was a kit that I put in the bottom. There's a stainless steel trough you can put in the bottom.
That kit looks like duct tape.
No, yeah, well that was, so the duct tape went on so that it wasn't pouring all my weed out. Oh, you can see it now, right? Look at that. So there's a stainless steel liner underneath those augers now because of this hole right here. So that was the fix for that. So there's a stainless steel liner that goes all the way across. But it ends here, and it doesn't cover this part. So that's what this nice little patch here is on here for, because it had a hole in here too. That is a farmer manufactured part right there. And it's gonna work, it's gonna keep the grain in, but that's just something to look for. Because like this is gonna tell you a lot about the condition of the bin. Now, this combine, obviously we didn't sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, so the customer knows that's what it is. Then you can open this little door here, and if it's full of water, you're gonna get a nice stinky bath. But then you check this auger here. So this one is starting to get wore. It's not bad, I can't shave with it yet, but check your flighting in here on this unload auger. This is not the original unloading auger in here. I've changed it before. So check that flighting on here. You'll check the flighting on the top one as well. Worn augers, just a couple $1,000, but every $1,000 just makes the combine more and more money. Right, so right here, this is the bottom of the cone. This is the best way to look is to crawl underneath it and look. Because a lot of times you'll see little holes in the cones from behind the vanes. So crawl underneath, have a look at the cone, make sure there's no holes in it. The wood blocks on the front of the augers right here. There's one on each auger, here, here, here. These actually aren't even all that bad of shape. Huh. Normally they're wore out, but as you can see, it's just 3 bolts, slides out the front, slide a new one on. Away you go. That's not a deal breaker if the wood blocks are shot. I'm dirty now. Funny, I feel like I'm getting richer all the time here. Isn't that the way it goes?
You gotta get filthy, man.
So check belts, check your idler pulleys, right? Then you get into here. I always walk around with a pry bar and I have a pry bar. Bring a pry bar with you, or a crowbar, and give all these a bit. These bearings in here, kind of known to be to go. I've changed these a few times. So just give it a bit of pry bar in there and here, make sure everything's tight.
But if they're not, what kind of job is it to do your bearings?
This side is real easy, this pin. The other side's a bit of a pain. You need one person on the inside, one person, because this side you can nicely work from both sides.
Okay.
The other side you can't. These bushings, these rubber bushings, yeah, they're kind of fun to press in and out.
That's not a field fix.
No, well, you take the arm off and then you bring it to the shop and then you
Yeah.
press it and bring it back out. So yeah, these are all the hangers for the sieves, right? Like these all, like this is on an eccentric here. That's what makes everything shake. So there's some here, right? This is going down to the shoe. 3 in here, 2 in there. So just pry them all, check. Sometimes they'll crack, but it's just, you know, it's just a weather crack. It's not a big deal. It's when they start to mush over like this. Like this one's starting to go. I think it's starting to mush over to one side. Like it's not out yet, but it's getting there, right? Yeah. Now the trick is when you change them though, to make sure that you have this in the center before you tighten the nuts up, because it's a steel sleeve shoved in and another steel pin and bolt and there's rubber in between. So if you have it all the way one way, now instead of it going a little bit each way, it's got to go right. It's got to go way too much and you'll tear them out. So before you tighten those bolts up, make sure you have that centered. I get some pry on there, right? I get an impact gun, you can get that out without having to hold the bolt on the other side. So this is one of probably the biggest issues of a case combine is the splines from the pump into this pulley, the hydrostatic pump, and they wear out. So you can look, like this one's starting to get a little loose. You see that spline shaft? I'll give that belt a pull there, Rich. You see that's getting loose on there?
See how the pump's not turning?
The pump's not turning, and it is. So that's getting wore. So I you can just change the hub. I changed the hub not too long ago. Probably getting due for another hub. Every year or two, take these 4 bolts out here. and you can just slide that hydrostat, just slide it back enough that you can get in there and get some lube on that spline.
Okay.
Put it back together.
Anti-seize or grease?
Whatever you want. I don't care what you put on there, as long as it's lube.
So you can support the flow around the top. You can stick some...
You can put a come along off the auger down or something to hold it up.
Yeah.
Slide it out, don't take all the lines off.
No.
So the newer ones have a hole in, like the other combine, there'll be a hole in here with a grease fitting on there that you can grease that spline.
Oh, okay.
So, but the old ones didn't have that, so.
Do they put never seize in a grease tube?
Probably, I get it in there. But when that blows in the field, you don't go anywhere, right? Because that's your drive, that's how you move. So when that spins out, there you sit.
Yeah.
I changed one in a snowstorm one day.
Nice.
That was fun.
If you need to know how to tow a combine, check the video.
Check out our last video. Yeah, we got to
Tow it backwards and put the steering and the auxiliaries.
take your
in
couplers
back.
out the front first.
Yeah. All right, so the rest is just more gearboxes, right?
Yeah, more gearbox, right angle drive gearbox here, right? So there's a seal here, right? Make sure there's no oil running out of here. Make sure there's no oil running out of here.
And check them for levels, which you can do up top, right?
This pump here, this is not, there's no pump on it because my other one, this bearing on the trunnion side went out. So this little, there was a little hole in this plate that was leaking. But what had happened is this belt is so tight on there. Well, it's not tight on there now, we're supposed to be tight, that it pulls that pulley over, right? There's so much side pressure on that, and then that bearing went. So that's home spare parts right there. Not a big deal to change.
Would you ever do an oil analysis on the hydrostat?
Yeah, you can, because there's the brass plates in there, right?
Yeah.
So this hydrostat is very strong yet. Sometimes they'll get slip in where it doesn't want to climb a hill anymore because there's too much slip either in the hydrostat plates are worn or in the motor plates down here. The motor down here is pretty much exactly the same as that one up there, right?
So what it is a 9-piston pump. All hydrostats are the same, whether it's a lawnmower and a combine. It's 9 pistons, and it transfers the oil from the piston to a swash plate, which is just brass. And if the brass gets worn at all, the oil dumps out the side.
And screws worn in the plates.
Right.
The seal is it's 2 plates that are machined perfectly that run beside each other like this, right? And they're spinning on each other. And it's just the oil that seals them. So when they get a groove in them, it'll leak high pressure, and then you don't get the drive pressure anymore.
No, so first symptom is it'll work when it's cold, and then as it gets hotter, the oil gets thinner, and then your drive gets worse and worse. The problem is that if there is an issue in the hydrostat where something blows apart, it takes everything out, and you have to take every hose off, and cooler, and hydrostat, if you're gonna replace it, and flush it out, because any little pieces that are stuck in there will just tear out the new one again.
I had a hydrostat apart. Customer brought his hydrostat in the shop because it wasn't driving, so I tore it all apart, found what was wrong with it, and I found a part in there that didn't belong. So I'm like, well, it's a pretty good indication that your motor is shot. So you get to buy both.
Yeah, and the labor to clean everything is a giant pain.
And flush the lines out because when one goes, it's a big mess.
Yeah, so smaller hydrostats, I found DM Precision in town. They've got fancy lasers and CNCs. They can machine the swash plate perfectly level again.
Valve plate.
The valve plate, they got it within a quarter, oh yeah, the swash plate's on the back side. But they got it within a quarter of a thousandth of an inch. Brand new again.
So here we go, 4-wheel drive axle. I was online looking for a combine, and man, I found some that were really cheap, but it was all because they were missing the 4-wheel drive axle. They were all 2-wheel drive combines, and which is great in some parts of the world, but in this part of the world, we all want 4-wheel drive because it gets muddy and we can still roll. Never really had a lot of issues with the 4-wheel drive axle. There's some motors down here. I've never had one apart, other than maybe leaking some oil. So here we are on this side of the combine. There's a lot busier over here, a lot more going on. So a lot more chains to check. Like I change these roller chains every year, especially this one's going pretty good. It's due for a change again. If you have wore out chains, it wears out the sprockets. And changing a chain is easy. Just hook the new one to it, drag it through. Changing sprockets is a lot more work. I don't like changing sprockets, so I just put a chain on every year. It's cheap maintenance. Some combines do have self-oilers on, where they got like an oil brush on. But every day I go with a can of oil and oil these 2 chains because they wear lots.
Why are they rusted, buddy?
Because this combine hasn't been in the field for probably 18 months. That's why they're rusty.
Somebody's gonna write it. I might as well say it.
Yeah, same thing on the other side. You got your bushings here. You got your pin over there, which is in a real lovely spot, which is right behind here now. So that's why this one is so much fun to change compared to the other one. You can see how hard it is. Religiously grease these every day. Every day. I don't even put 5 hours on or 10 hours. You grease this one. And same on the other side. And then you have very little trouble.
Belts, are they a pain to get at? Are they expensive?
They're not bad. The bigger belts, we'll go up top. Expensive belts are up there. The hardest one to change is probably this one here. I did change this one in the field a little while ago, a couple years ago, last time I was running it. And I think it took me an hour. To change this belt, you gotta get it over the shafts. You gotta take these chains off. You gotta take this out of there so you get the belt off. And you gotta take this belt off and this belt off so it can come off of this pulley. But I've done it lots, so I knew what wrenches I needed, and it was just a matter of going to town. So check the belts for cracks. So here too, this pulley here, I give it a shake. I make sure it's not loose in this shaft or that one's loose in that shaft. These belts, like this one's a couple $100, that one maybe $500. You probably count on most belts being like $200-500. So you get going to those big ones, they're like $800-900. And then check your chains. So you can see down here that this chain's due for replacement. That sprocket's getting worn. This sprocket is the driven sprocket. So the drive sprocket on top of this elevator is probably worn out twice as bad. I can show you how to check that. That's real simple to check. And that's the clean grain elevator. So all the grain that comes off your screens goes down to the bottom, comes across this auger, and then this elevator takes it up to the bin. This elevator here is what brings all your stuff off that needs to be rethreshed, comes across, goes up there. This auger wears a lot less. There's not a lot of crop going through it. So then also what you need to do then is you need to climb under here. You get dirty again. But this pan right here, this auger trough, all your grain is running across this. So this one I replaced because the other one got a hole worn in it. If you get a hole worn in it, you can't see it from out there, but all your grain will fall onto the ground. And then you'll blow all your chaff on top, and you'll think that it's going through the combine, and you're not combine set up right, but really it's because you have a hole worn in down here. It's not that hard to change. You can change it in maybe an hour or two. It's just a matter of just crawling underneath and having a look. And then while you're under here looking at that, you can look at the frame to make sure it's not all cracked and twisted and stuff like that. Because sometimes people get the combine stuck and they pull on them with big tractors and excavators and stuff, and they twist them. So this is the cleaning fan here, which provides the air blast underneath. This belt here, it's just basically like a snowmobile belt. It goes, this one adjusts, I mean, go faster or slower. So this belt here is getting a little thin. You can't really tell unless you got a new one to go up against it. But a new belt on this can give you an extra 50-100 RPM if you can't get it up to speed just because it's a little wider. This bearing in here is known to go. My brother bought one, couldn't figure out why his fan speed dropped off, that bearing is blown out. So this bearing here, easy to change. Take these two bolts out, flip this out of the way, pop the bearing off, put a new one on, away you go. So here's the feeder drives. Right, so you got a big belt here, big triple belt here, which engages, and then you got another belt here. So these ones are in good shape. It's got one little crack here, you can see. Right, but it's not all busted up and torn out. These will run for quite a while yet. I got some wear on the drive here, but that's been like that for years. So I wouldn't worry about that. All the 1600 series combines, 1400 series combines, any of the rock trap, this bearing here is a major fail point. So get your pry bar under here and give this one is still good yet. I changed it multiple times. Check this bearing. For some reason, it's this bearing and this edge of the trap that likes to go. And to change it, you had to pull the feeder house off because you can't get that shaft past the tires otherwise. Then if you took the tire, it's just a pain to change it without pulling the feeder house. Feeder house comes off pretty simple. And when that goes, you're down. On the newer stuff, so we're gonna show you what the update did. So this was the feeder reverser here. There's a starter motor here that engages this gear to reverse the feeder. But then in 2003, they finally fixed that. So in 2003, they went to a hydraulic feeder reverser. This thing is awesome. This thing will back up any slug. The starter motor sometimes won't back it out, it's not enough power. So there's a hydraulic cylinder here that engages and then it backs it up. Now while we're here, these hydraulic cylinders though are kind of prone to leak. This is an aftermarket cylinder on it. The case ones, they're welded. They put them together. You can't change the seals because they put all the seals in and then they weld them. And those welds will start leaking oil, and then they'll leak a lot of oil, and then they'll blow up, and there'll be oil everywhere. So that's a bit of a fail point. Watch those cylinders. that they're not leaking. And then this one here, I get to change the gear in here because you see it's wore out. So that's on the to-do list. But anyways, when they went to this reverser, they got rid of that starter motor over here. And we just went to a simple drive, feeder drive to rock trap drive. And then they put an extra bearing. So now there's the bearing back in here, and there's an extra one, an extra pillow block here with a greasable bearing in it. So now this side has 2 bearings on it, and that kind of eliminated the biannual rock trap bearing change. All right, so we'll start here in the engine compartment. And look, there's a brand new motor in here. Look at that, isn't that cool? So here's the expensive belts. So this separator belt, I think is, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars. See, it's got a small chunk out of it. This separator belt is where all the engaging goes when you hit your rotor. So it takes a lot of abuse. It's got some acres left in it, but it's getting there. And then this is the rotor belt. So you want to roll this over and check it because it'll get a crack in one spot right here. The whole belt will be like brand new, except you have a small crack right in one spot, and that's where it's gonna break. So just roll it all the way around, check them all, make sure. I think it's like a $600 or $700 belt. It's a few hours to change. It's a matter of taking off this U-joint here, this chain off, this pin out of here. You're supposed to put a tool on here. I just use a pry bar, pry it open, and fight it off. Not fun in the middle of summertime. So that's pull this dipstick on this guy here, just to make sure you got some good oil in there. If this guy is leaking oil, you won't see it because it'll be running into the rotor and you'll never see the leak because that end of that gearbox runs in the rotor. So if that gearbox is using oil, there's a good chance it's got to come out. I had to change these plates back here. They cracked and broke, and that thing was running on an angle, and the splines at the end of the rotor ended up wearing out. This is something you never want to use, but that wrench, that is for when you plug it. So when you plug it, you get to climb up here and stick this in here and start cranking that rotor by hand back and forth to get it to move. And yeah, been there, done that. Never a fun day. It's usually because it's getting near the end of the day and the crop's starting to get tough and you're pushing to get that last field done. And then plug.
Yeah. The engine, I think we can almost say what to look for. We got that video. Leaks, blow by, coolant, oil.
Like the 66s, 88s all had A3 Cummins in them. The 44s had 5.9s. Pretty good motors. Occasional knock out the side. Right. Alright, so this combine is equipped with a beautiful big top, which is awesome when you're in the field, but it's hard on machines. This auger here, you can see is getting worn on the end. I'm gonna guess that 95% of the used combines are gonna have this end worn off like that. Especially with the big top bar, this auger has to push all the grain up, so this end gets a lot of wear on it. The rest of the auger will be fine, it's just this tip. There's a lot of places up country that reflight augers and they'll put an end on for you.
So you have to bring in the auger though?
Yeah, you gotta bring in the auger. So this one is just a matter of a couple bolts here and this end's off and the bottom end is in a bearing and it's splined to a shaft. So this one actually comes out, take this, you slide it out. This one comes probably the easiest auger to pull out of the whole combine. And then there's augers down here. Your unload augers. Just check the bin. It means there's no holes rotted in it. Any holes out the side. Any holes in your bin is gonna be grain loss, right? And then you can also check, like you can see here, we got another patch on here. This one had a hole worn in it, right here. So this has got a yield sensor, which is right in behind here. And if you pull these 2 nuts off, this will just pop right out. And you can have a good look at that top sprocket, which I'm pretty sure is gonna be worn more than the bottom one that we showed you. So the unload tube here, there's a plate up front with 4 bolts. Take that plate off, take your half-inch wrench that you use to get that plate off the front of the rotor. Take this plate off and you can check your flighting on this auger and check the tube. Now this tube I did replace because the old one was thin and wore out, and I've put a new auger in here over the years. The flighting it's worth. It's all that grain. Soybeans especially just wear everything out. Here we are in the cab. Not a whole lot goes wrong in here other than this has got the Case IH AFS display, and these things suck. I'm just gonna put that out there. They delaminate, so you can't press the buttons anymore. If you grab the corner of the screen and push on it, sometimes you can get it to work. But this one I think has pretty much had it. My other combine there, the owner got so fed up with it, he put a egg leader in it, and that thing works awesome. Oh, then you can look under here for mice damage. So you can see we got a little bit of mice damage. Mice like to live in combine calves. So you can look in all these places or use your nose. You can see the mice have been in here a little bit. Mice like combine calves. And air filter behind here is beat up a little bit from the mice. But yeah, check for mice. They like to chew on wires. Just have a walk around, see if you hear any clicking and banging and crashing. All right, so get them running, walk around, have a look for noises. I got a problem here, watch. See it? I got a paddle broke. There it is. You hear a noise, you gotta try and figure out where it's coming from. So the best thing is if you can kind of hear roughly where it's coming from, if you can see something moving that's not quite right, shut it down, get out there with a pry bar, get out there, start turning belts, start pulling bushings and stuff, start prying on things and see if you can find what's wrong. So for instance, in this one we heard a noise. You hear it? Yeah. Could not really hear what's going on. It's banging and clanging and shut her down. We got in there, took that pulley off because that's where we thought we could hear it from. Got in there, we found that pin was out. But that knocking sound that runs with the chaffer, that's pretty good indication there's a pin, something wrong, and they got a pin or a bushing or something wrong with that chaffer. So we found it. So now we have to fix it. We're on the newer one here. So we took that belt off and that pulley off because we thought something was wrong in here, but remember those pins I was talking about? Yeah. I get to do one. And seeing how this is the side that's a two-man job, I think that would be a good next video for DeVos Garage.
I'm busy, Kevin. I've upgraded to just holding a light.
You get to be the man on the inside.
All right. Hopefully Kevin covered most of the basics. There's a lot going on in the machines, but generally, as a rule of thumb, 6,000 hours is...
Well, that's 4,500 on that combine.
4,500 hours?
On the combine, 6,000 on the engine. That being said, is you can have a combine with 2,000 separator hours on it and everything's wore out because nothing's been changed.
All right, if you guys enjoyed these videos, definitely comment down below. We'll keep doing this with other equipment. It was a nice rainy day. Kevin's all happy because the plants are growing and he doesn't have to do anything. You got everything in?
Everything's planted.
Nice.
Not everything's up yet though.
It will be soon though.
Hopefully.
But now you can come back.
The bean planter's not washed yet because we don't know, we might have to replant. We hate replanting.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, you're gonna come back and work on that irrigator, get it out of my yard, right?
Well, is it C10 done yet? Or?
It's got a lot more progress on it than your stupid irrigator fertilizer.
I'm sure irrigator we done before that though. Let's get a little bet. Case of beer bet, see which one's done first.
All right, case of beer. As to whether the C10 running or like done.
Done.
All right.
It's running down for all our irrigators in the field.
Case of beer. All right, stick around for that video. You saw it. Remember, you're not filthy, you're not rich. Here we go.